All right, great. I think we're live. So welcome everyone. Welcome to Mindful Nurses. My name is Janelle. I'm a co-founder of Mindful Nurses together with Claudia Wong. And we are super excited to welcome you. We are doing these Facebook live streams every Wednesday, Wellness Wednesdays, to support nurses' mental health and well-being, sharing mindfulness and holistic wellness practices. And today we have a beautiful guest speaker, Lisa Dunlap, who's an integrative nurse practitioner who'll be sharing with us ways to slow down and reconnect with your spirit through mind-body practices and self-compassion work. Um, Lisa has been working on the front lines of the pandemic and knows firsthand the critical importance of caring for ourselves while we care for others. So we're super excited to have Lisa here with us today. And I will turn it over to Lisa. If you're signing on, you can ask any questions. Let us know where you're calling in from and also ask any questions. And at the end, we'll have a chance to share those with Lisa. So thanks for tuning in and thanks for sharing with us, Lisa. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I feel very honored and I love what you guys are doing and creating. I've enjoyed a few of the talks already, and it's just been a wonderful thing to share with people. So, yeah, I'm here in Seattle and it's smoking hot right now, literally and figuratively. Lots of fires, not near me, but so, yeah, I'm really excited to share my talk, and it is called Nourishing Yourself with Kindness in the Present Moment. So, I'm going to go ahead and share it. And can you see that?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I've worked in hospice most recently. I'm adult geriatric primary care, and I spent many years before becoming a nurse practitioner studying herbal medicine, aromatherapy, reflexology, healing touch, and brought those into my practice over the years. And most of my practice has been outpatient and community work. Um, so I wanted to start us off with a practice right off the bat. And um, I kind of wanted to share some images rather than my face for you guys. I'm a very sensory person, and this is one of my favorite tools that I've been using on my own healing journey and sharing with others. Um, it's a five senses practice that I'm sure many of you have heard of, and it can really bring us into our bodies, bring us into the present, and help us with any type of trauma response we might be experiencing, fight or flight, anxiety, things like that. Um, and as we all know, so much is going on around us all the time in the world and in our work. It's a great way to just bring yourself and reground, and it's free and super easy. So, this picture is something to help you. It helps me, and I want you to kind of insert yourself in the picture and think about five things you could possibly see if you were in this image. This is the Salish Sea here where I live, and so it's the ocean. And go ahead and name in your mind five things you might see around you, and in between each, take a deep breath. So, for example, I see the seaweed. I see a shell. I see my toes. I see the water. And after you've come up with five things that you see around you, think about four things you might be able to touch in this environment. And if it's easier for you, go ahead and just touch things in your physical environment. Um, so, four things I can feel. I can feel my hands together right now. I can feel the seaweed in my toes. I can feel some pokey shells on my feet. Maybe I can feel my heartbeat. And then move to 3 things you could hear in this environment and breathe in between each that you name. I can hear the waves. Can hear a bird. Can hear silence. And 2 things you might be able to smell. Name those and breathe. Seaweed smell. Crabs. And lastly, something you can taste in your mouth right now. Name it and take a deep breath. And go ahead and open your eyes when you're ready. And just notice how you feel, if it's any different than when we started. Maybe a little more grounded, a little less anxious. I love this tool because you can do it in a hospital, you can do it in your car. And I often laugh at myself because I forget all 5 senses and I forget the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it doesn't matter. You can just do it in whatever way serves you. A lot of times for me, it's just walking outside in the grass. I like these simple, realistic tools that we can use day to day. So, why is it important to reconnect to the present moment? I think we hear so much about this, and we're all aware of that term. One thing that you're going to hear in my story, in my healing journey, was that I realized the present moment is all we have. That's actually true and real. Everything else is stories, thoughts, emotions. We can believe them. We can become thoughts and emotions. We can become the past and the future. But when you really get down to it right here, right now, that's it. That's all we've got power over, which is the next statement. How we choose to perceive and experience the present moment is all we have control over. And I just find so much power and liberation in that, with everything we manage as healthcare providers in this pandemic, as mothers, as humans. Um, every day we're going to have struggles, and it's how we interpret that and choose to be with it. And for me, just really getting grounded in the present uh, brings that joy to difficult circumstances. Oops, where'd you go? There we go. Is that right? Okay. So, mind body connection. Here's a lovely picture of the vagus nerve. I love this nerve. It's so awesome. It's got your brain and all the innervating nerves all the way down to your gut. And it just says fight or flight to me. It's like, you know that if you're in fight or flight, all those things contract. You get tight neck, you get a tight gut, a bellyache. And it gives that visual of how much our brain and what's going on is connected to our body. We're mammals, so we have this mammalian, we all know it, fight or flight or freeze even is the new one. And often we do need to fight or flight. One thing I've noticed during this pandemic, with the riots on top of that, now fires in my area, it's kind of like, how do we not stay in that fight or flight? And when we go to work and we're gearing up in all this PPE, it's like we're in fight or flight in those moments. But how do we come back and get out of that? And we don't want to stay there. That's what creates burnout, chronic stress, and kind of physical disease. Um, and I also kind of imagine global trauma can trigger personal mini traumas inside of us. And so the littlest thing, like my 2-year-old having a tantrum, in the last 6 months, kind of feels like this big thing. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. I also know for me, even just putting on PPE when I was working out here in the community in King County would cause a fight or flight response. I felt so constricted. And I can imagine so many people feel that way. So, part of my mission in my business and self compassion connections and my holistic practice is empowering self and others to use the mind body connection as a tool and to our advantage. And how can we switch into parasympathetic? And so it also can work for us. We can actually have positive experiences with this mind body connection. All right, I think there. So here's my story, and I like imagery. I call it pain as my portal, and there's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the beginning of my story is self-awareness and the downward spiral. I think some of what Janelle and Claudia have talked about and other speakers is burnout. And my journey began a year ago with some clues at work that I didn't know were burnout, such as my boss saying, "You're not very compassionate with the patients anymore." And we're getting complaints. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've been this like holistic hospice nurse practitioner for so many years. Are you kidding? And, coming home irritable, insomnia, all those things. And then I got the gift of pain. I had severe undiagnosed hip, low back pain that pretty much the day of my 40th birthday, after I'd run a half marathon, I could barely walk. And it wasn't anything that happened in the half marathon. It was pain that was building. And I got ping pong around the system for months. I got to be a patient. I went to 8 doctors and had multiple CTs and MRIs and this and that, and nobody knew. And finally, it was like, oh, SI joint dysfunction and sciatica. And meanwhile, I'm trying to raise my 5-year-old and 2-year-old and garb up and go to work and help others who are, dying. And then you add in the pandemic, and here in King County, I think other places had it similar, but we got some of the first cases, and my organization, Providence, knew a lot about COVID before the community. So here they're telling us it's highly contagious, but you have no PPE to put on, and you just got to go into these nursing homes every day, no mask, no gloves. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And so I went down that spiral of anxiety and fear. And then in March, I get a call, the call that nobody wants to get, that says, "Can you sit down?" It was a doctor calling me and said, "Do you have a minute?" And it was my OBGYN, and I had gone in to see them for something to see, my pain was kind of pelvic, low back. And I instantly knew the news was bad. And I took a deep breath, and my family was driving up to Crystal Mountain here for our final ski trip before the shutdown. And she just said, "We found this large solid mass in your ovary, and it's the size of a grapefruit, and we don't know what it is. It's not a simple one. And I've never had a history, no, um, and nothing in my family, nothing like that." And so I just, that tunnel vision came in, and it was like, for a hospice nurse practitioner or nurse, ovarian and mass are not two words you want to hear. And she said, "You need to rush back, and this could, burst or torsion." And this was my first moment of really clear awareness of like how to practice self-kindness. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to rush back, because I've been dealing with this for 6 months, and probably this is what's been causing my pain. And I'm on my way to this mountain, and where else would I want to be but with my family? And so that's me and my son. I went up there. I had a wonderful weekend, and it's like my mind wanted to spiral that whole weekend. Like, I have cancer, it's metastasizing, it's going to burst. But you know what? He got on skis for the first time. My daughter went down the mountain by herself. I was riding deep powder in the backcountry. And that moment was beautiful. And then, as life goes, I couldn't hold on to that. I went back to town, and I was in the like spiral. And when I went into the doctor's office and saw the mass on the screen, I certainly spiraled and was like, okay, this is metastasizing as we speak. I could like feel it in my lungs and I couldn't breathe. And I could, I felt more back pain. And they said, look, we don't know if it's cancer. Everything in King County is shutting down, lights out. We're going to have to wait to get results. It could be months. And if you need surgery, that could be months, So it was really humbling. And I did spend a month in that fear, anxiety, victim, just like, woe is me, this is the worst. Um, and then after they gave me negative cancer results, I could relax a little bit. And I began to go back to that time on the mountain and realized all I could do is surrender to just what is. Like, I'm in pain, I'm waiting for surgery. They said, don't come to the ER, don't even, nothing, because it's so bad here in King County. We won't treat you, just deal with it. And that's a humbling thing to hear as a nurse or nurse practitioner or healthcare provider. And so I just learned for the first time in my life how to slow down and just listen to my body, listen to cues, nourish myself. Obviously, I was off work and I was able to just, if I felt a trigger, if I felt pain, okay, I'm going to go outside and put my feet in the grass, or I'm going to go sit on my yoga mat and do some meditation, or I'm going to just eat healthy food mindfully. And this wasn't how I've ever really truly lived my entire life. Like, I've lived in a go, 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 do, do, do. And my ego was attached to all the things I could achieve. And suddenly they're all taken away. And it was so beautiful because I could just really hear what I needed and give myself that. And so the gifts that I received from that experience was when they went in to do the surgery 3 months later, there was nothing there. There was no cyst, there was no mass, there was no sign of it. It was gone. And it had been 8 weeks since the last ultrasound, and they had they had no idea. The doctor came out of the OR, jaw dropped, and completely clueless. Like, I've never seen a complex solid cyst like this. They still didn't know the cause. Just poof, disappear. She's like, I've seen them shrink. And I laughed. I was like, I know what it was. Like, I brought down my stress. I got really grounded and I learned what I needed. And I did manifestation and I did aromatherapy and I did, a few, some herbal medicine, but I had a community of support, envisioning it disappearing. And every day I thought about that. And I did things that I never would have done before. I talked to my body and I touched those, that chakra, and I did energy work. And it was so powerful. To have that experience. And of course, I couldn't convince my doctor that time, but by the second follow-up visit, she was like, okay, I think I'm on board with what you're talking about. I want to come to one of your workshops. So that was pretty special. And of course, my children, that's my 2-year-old and 5-year-old, they really taught me about that present moment, just being with them. That's my son picking up a slug, and you can just, they're in it. They're in their emotions. They're constantly giving themselves what they need in the moment. It's almost like they're the pioneers of self-kindness. They don't even know how to not be nourishing themselves all the time. And so, and that was the other piece I wanted to share, was just that tunnel vision. When you have sort of that near-death experience of what's really important, it's like, oh, nothing else. I don't need the world. I don't need even my job at that point. It's like, I just need them and their laughter and like me and my garden and my husband. And so it was just this beautiful healing journey for me. And these were some of my resiliency tools that I came up with that worked for me. And I'm not going to go through all of them in this talk. this is just an example of what I do in some of my workshops and some of the group sessions that I hold. And so deep breathing, we talked about the parasympathetic, and it really, in one deep breath, you can actually trigger your vagus nerve and turn off fight or flight. So I often recommend and use myself that deep breathing before I go in to see a patient. I shared the five senses tool, and I also take that a step further, and I use stones in my pocket, rose quartz or at my heart, and aromatherapy. We talked about some chakra stuff and energy healing and how powerful that is. Stored emotions, body awareness. It's a new journey for me that I'm learning to listen to my body. And I think nurses it's the worst. We're taught to turn it all off and like hold your pee, suck it up, and, and forget self-kindness. It's like, your mistakes are kind of like blasted on the wall. What are they? I mean, sentinel events and all this and that. There's no like, how can we, forgive and think about what we're doing if we make a mistake and learn from it and move on. And obviously journaling has been something for me. Guided self-inquiry, deep human connection is so powerful for self-kindness and for preventing burnout. Daily rituals, and they do not have to be big. They can be drinking a glass of water while you take some deep breaths. Or for me, it was cold plunging during this time. Rest, learning how to rest and allowing rest is a big one. And then, of course, the actual self-compassion practice that we'll talk a little more about. Oh, and hilarious is that I went back to work after all of this if I hadn't learned it once. And here I was then thwarted into the pandemic. And I'm like, oh, I'm healed. I have no cyst. I'll be good. And oh boy, was I wrong. And, 5 nursing homes a day full of COVID patients, garb up, drive around with a mask. Instantly, symptoms came back instantly. Tummy pain, SI joint pain. And I just thought, this is hilarious. There's not even a cyst there. I was perfectly healthy when I stepped back into work. And that doesn't mean my job was bad or hospice work is bad. It just means for me at this point in my journey, that kind of work was not resonating. And I could literally, my body was telling me to stop doing that. And so that's what I did. I resigned from my job. It's only been about 4 weeks now. And certainly you don't have to do that to be healthy or to, you know, reconnect to yourself. For me, it was also wanting to homeschool my children and build upon this business and share my journey with others. So, the definition of self compassion that I like to use is slowing down enough for that quiet, still awareness to listen, accept, surrender, and nourish yourself with what you know you need and deliver it in that moment. And I think that it's very challenging for us to do all those steps at once. And so it's not something I learned overnight. I'm still working on it. And if you are doing this, wonderful, celebrate that. And we can't always deliver what we need. But what I've learned is it doesn't have to be a yoga class or a spa treatment. It can literally be in that moment how we choose to feel and do. And then, of course, a beautiful quote by Pema Chodron: compassion for others begins with kindness to ourselves. And so that's the other part that I really realized was what you hear so much. We want to give as nurses, as healthcare providers, so much as mothers. And it's like really important to give to ourselves first, that self-love and that like inner story of not needing to have anyone's approval. And I certainly want to help. I want to help things going on with the pandemic and the riots and all those things. But how can I do that if I'm in a state of fight or flight, fear, anxiety? The best way is when we get that centered energy, and then we can begin to extend that energy outward. So, as the title of my talk said, self-compassion practice or self-kindness practice in the single moment. Um, I'm not yet trained in mindful self-compassion work, and so that's something I'm going to be undergoing. But I believe self-compassion work is for everyone and anyone, and it's a spiritual practice that many people have been talking about for years. And Dr. Kristen Neff brought more awareness to that in the intellectual world rather than the spiritual world. And her practice I really like, and it brings in that self-touch. And so I'll read through them and then we can go ahead and try it together. So, hand on heart is just beautiful because it instantly brings that connection to your parasympathetic nervous system and regrounds you. And then you tell yourself, this is a moment of suffering. And I kind of, what's part of that is being able to name maybe what you're feeling or going through, and accept that and be okay with that. And then to say to yourself, suffering is a part of life and it's okay. And then it would be, how can I be kind to myself? What do I need to hear? What do I need to do? And so, um, this is something I'm still working on. I don't find easy is the talking to myself, which is, it's okay. And, I, I, I'm with you. I'm here. I love you. It's like imagining what your friend would say to you if you were suffering, struggling. And then I've added this last part on is, what exactly do I need right now? Is it rest, water, touching a tree, getting grounded? Um, and so I want you to close your eyes and put your hand on your heart and reconnect with your breath. And think about a time, not a major struggle, but a little struggle that has been going on or happened today. And name it and breathe. Surrender to it and say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. And think about the common shared experience of humanity that others have gone through this. And you're not alone. And breathe. And think about what you would want to hear from your best friend. And say that to yourself. It's okay, sweetie. I'm here with you. And breathe. And the last one is, what is it that I need right now or in the near future? What is it I need to soothe myself? And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And yeah, this is a beautiful practice. I think it's something that you can continue to practice. I know I am. And sometimes I write it out. And that's part of one of my rituals is being able to process that. So we kind of talked about reconnecting to the present moment through different tools. That nature is the easiest one. And you can even do that just by looking out a window at work. Um, And oh, that's funny. The picture didn't work on this one. So the importance of self-kindness for cultivating resilience. And when I think of resilience, that's kind of the ability to bounce back and thrive in difficult circumstances and not just survive. And how do we bounce back from things like working in a pandemic, mothering children while working full time, having physical injuries, burnout. And so it's just self-nourishing to really practice self-acceptance, self-love, It's nourishing for you. It's soothing. It cultivates awareness. And again, it's all we can control, really. We can control our mind and our heart, but not the world around us or even disease. Our thoughts and inner stories are what determine our joy and happiness, no matter what the circumstances are. And we have to start with ourselves. Oh, there's the picture. It came later. And the last exercise before I wrap up is, how can you integrate some of these practices into your day? I think one thing that's funny is we go to workshops and we hear talks, and then it's like I find myself, I don't have time to do that, or I forget to do it. And so right now, take a moment to envision possibly one thing that you heard today, one thing, anything that you could integrate into your day, in your work day, in your daily life at home, whether it's deep breathing in the morning while you drink water, or walking out and practicing your senses in your yard, or perhaps putting a stone in your pocket at work, deep breathing before you go into a patient's room. These are just some ideas. I like to keep it simple and realistic so I can succeed. Part of self-compassion work for me is not feeling guilty for what I didn't do and putting the shoulds on myself of needing to meditate every day. You know, it just happens when it happens. And when I journal, it happens when it happens, and then I celebrate it. So if we were in a workshop setting, we might talk about something like this a little bit further. One of the things I worked on when I was on my healing journey was a self-compassion toolkit, and I did some watercoloring and thought about a reminder for folks when they need to think about self-compassion and have how to do it and when to do it. And so it comes with this rose quartz stone, and I partnered with another female small business healer here in Seattle, and she makes these organic lotion bars. And then we put frankincense in there because it's very grounding and spiritual, and aromatherapy, as we all know, can be so powerful for bringing us reconnecting to ourselves, changing that mind body fight or flight response. And so I'll often that sharp, sorry, I forgot to say, rose quartz is a heart chakra stone. So I'll often keep that one near me when working with patients or having a difficult day, and I'll do a heart opener pose, or I'll put the aromatherapy even just on like a tongue depressor in my pocket at work, or a cotton ball. You know, you don't have to lather up. And then the self-compassion cards come, they have tips of reminders from some of the workshops I do. So it's hand on heart to reconnect with self-touch, deep breathing, awakening the senses, and surrendering to what is, and what you're feeling. And this could be for your altar. And so I sell these. They're on my website, they're on my Facebook page, and they're a great gift for people that are struggling right now. And then there's also a link to download the cards that's a lot cheaper and easier. And I think that's on my Facebook page now. So if that's something you want to do, and then how to stay in touch with me. I have a website, selfcompassionconnections.com. I have a Facebook business page, same, Self-Compassion Connections. I'd love for anyone who hears this talk that's interested to come to my free Facebook group, and that's called Self-Compassionate Healing for Healthcare Professionals. And it is just a place where you can share or not. It's to kind of keep each other accountable for our journeys with self-compassion, preventing burnout. There's inspiring posts, things like that. And you can always email me or message me on Facebook if you can't find it. And then I also have an email list that if you want to be added, and I have a program I'm starting for healthcare organizations, and I've started a few contracts, like going into healthcare organizations and offering workshops and follow-up groups for healthcare professionals. I'm doing it private in the community too, but if this is something you felt could be beneficial to your workplace and you want to talk to your wellness team about it, I certainly think everybody needs something, even if it's not my thing. Like, there's just not enough support in the workplace right now, for healthcare professionals. Just not at all. And what's next for me? I have some workshops coming up for community members, and you can find them on my Facebook pages. I have a compassionate body awareness workshop with a Feldenkrais practitioner coming up in September. And then I have a 2-part workshop for healthcare professionals called Self-Compassionate Resilience in Healthcare. So we really just delve into more of what I talked about tonight. Oops, typo. And a drop-in group session for healthcare professionals. Actually, I'm doing it after this meeting tonight, and it's usually on Wednesday nights at 6 o'clock. And I'm trying to move that because it conflicts with this one. So that should be happening in October. And I'm also running a group for moms. It's a 3-part series. And I do one-on-one sessions just to practice these tools. And I'm also working on getting some of the workshops connected with CEUs and having them recorded on my website. So I think I can stop sharing. And I think that's all I had to share. And I don't know if Janelle, you have any questions, or if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Such a wonderful presentation. And we had a lot of people signing in and saying thank you for these practices. If anyone has any questions, you can type them in now, and we'll ask them to Lisa while we have her here. Um, yeah, I really appreciated the self-care practice of just placing your hand on your heart when you're feeling overwhelmed or feeling any kind of emotion. I feel like just giving ourselves this simple touch is so nourishing and reassuring. So I love that. I love the practices that are, like you said, something we can just take with us and use when we're at work or any kind of daily situation.
Yeah,
Taking a
thank
simple
you.
breath. Yeah.
Yeah, I think touch is like another one that I've learned to practice self-massage, foot massage and hand massage. And it's obviously something we're all more deprived of in this time in the world. We can't hug our friends as easily. Uh,
Yes.
and there's something so soft about just connecting with our heart. It's like, you don't even have to remember much of the self-compassion practice. I think you just kind of like drop into it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Yeah, thank you also for sharing your offerings. These are really wonderful offerings, and we'll be sharing the presentation on our Facebook page and also through our email listserv and our website. You can access the recording of this presentation and also Lisa's contact information and the information she shared in this PowerPoint about her upcoming event. So this was just a little taster of what Lisa is offering, and for anything that intrigued you, you can definitely go deeper into these things with Lisa. So, um, thank you all for signing in, and thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing with us. It was really beautiful to hear your story, to hear about the work that you're doing, and it's very needed and inspiring and nurturing work. So, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
sharing with
Yeah,
us.
I hope that people in healthcare start to, when in the organization level, really see the need. That's the one positive I could see coming out of this pandemic is it's like we've always had burnout, right?
Yeah.
But I don't feel that many places support their employees. And now you add in this extra layer of work and stress and trauma. And I think they're going to have to. I think people are going to have to wake up to how do we give them tools and how do we support each other? Because it's like, I mean, the people have just been putting out fires for the last 6 months, at least in the places I've been working. And I think that that's just continues that sort of fight or flight and burnout, that road.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's so true. And it's just the culture, like you were saying before, we're just taught to be tough and like go through a 12-hour shift without peeing or eating or anything. And there's like a shift in our awareness now of, yeah, we have to take care of ourselves too. And I think it's so inspiring to meet people like you who are sharing this message. And yeah.
thank you. Yeah, that reminded me of like a conversation with the doctors on my team right before I resigned. And they're like having the the ego, like, oh, but I used to stay up 3 nights in a
Right.
row and see so many patients, as if it's like that badge of honor. And I instantly caught myself like, oh gosh, well, I don't do that. I hate working, I hate being on call. And Um, but then I was like, no, like this isn't something to be celebrated. Like I think I chimed in with something like, oh, that sounds awful. Like I really hope that that is not the wave of the future for doctors, setting the bar down that trickles down as if we're supposed to rise to that. It's like we can be
Yeah.
good professionals without um, overworking, right? And
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important too because it is like you said, like hospice nursing, like these positions, they're wonderful jobs. It's really meaningful work and really necessary work, and so it's so important to support people and those healthcare providers in those roles so they don't get to the point of burnout and leaving the profession. For some of us, it's our path to do something else, but it's so important to support those who are staying in that work and not overwork them because we really need these
I
nurses.
know, I know. And even just learning like the cues of burnout, I don't feel like that's something people talk about.
Yeah.
At least in my workplaces, maybe other workplaces are more supportive, but
Mm.
I don't think I'd learned them until the last like 6 months, like looking back and going, "Oh, oh," and I think that it's simple things. I think we thought of burnout, I did, as like this huge crashing nervous breakdown. Maybe it can
Right.
be, but I think it can be this compounding thing too that like builds over time. And then we or I think it comes in waves too. I think you can have like little bits of it and then, and come up and down. And so I think there's kind of just a lack of discussion around it too or something.
Mm. Totally. Totally. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for bringing some awareness to this today for us and some beautiful reminders and simple practices we can use. And I'm really excited to explore your work further and to share this with our community. And I'm excited for all the people that will benefit from what you're sharing. So thank you again so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me and thank you for what you guys are doing. I can't wait to see where it goes. And yeah, I'm really excited. I want those retreats as soon as possible.
Yeah. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank
See you.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.